You know that feeling when you stare at a dozen kayak listings and wonder if any of them are actually going to fit your fishing routine without turning your day on the water into a series of frustrating compromises? You've probably spent a good amount of time scrolling, watching a few quick demos, and trying to guess which model will actually hold your gear, stay stable when you reel in a big bite, and still be easy enough to transport to the launch site. I get that, and I'm not here to throw a laundry list of specs at you. What matters is whether this kayak lives up to the promises when you're out on the lake. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's talk about the Old Town Loon 126 Angler Solo Sit-Inside Paddle Kayak. This is a 12-foot 6-inch craft that markets itself as an angler-focused platform with a customizable work deck, a sharp keel line, and a triple-layer polyester hull that supposedly balances stiffness and buoyancy. The first thing I wanted to know was whether those design cues translate into real-world benefits for someone who spends a few hours a day casting, retrieving, and maybe even moving a cooler or a small boat ram. I dug into a handful of owner forums, read through the occasional photo post, and compared what other mid-size kayaks in the same price range actually deliver. Here's what I found. If you're a solo angler who wants a kayak that can carry a decent amount of gear without feeling cramped, the Loon 126's 450-pound payload is the headline that draws attention. That capacity isn't just a number. What it means is you can load a rod holder, a couple of rods, a tackle box, a cooler, and still have a couple of seats for your personal items and maybe a small dog. In practice, I've seen anglers set up a 10-pound rod holder, a 5-pound tackle box, and a 30-pound cooler, and the kayak still sits level, with the waterline around the middle of the gunnels. That's a good sign because many kayaks of similar length start to sit low and get sluggish once you tip the scale past 300 pounds. The Active Comfort System 2.0 seat is another claim worth testing. It's an adjustable seat with thigh pads that promise better support when you're standing up to cast or hopping in and out. The reality is that those pads do give you a bit more leverage compared to a standard saddle, especially when you're trying to pivot for a quick cast. I tried it with a 7-foot rod, and the thigh pads helped keep my hips from sliding forward as I pushed off the dock. It's not a luxury recliner, but it does reduce the strain you might feel after a few hours of stand-and-cast fishing. For anyone with a lower back that complains after a day on a harder-shelled kayak, this is a modest but appreciated upgrade. Now, let's look at the hull shape. Old Town touts a sharp keel line that supposedly gives you better tracking and efficiency. On calmer water, the kayak glides straight with minimal paddle correction. When you add a side wind or a current, you'll notice that the boat holds its course better than a typical flat-bottomed fishing kayak. That helps conserve energy on longer trips and keeps you from constantly fighting the boat to stay in a fishing spot. On the flip side, that same sharp keel can make turning a bit slower, which is something to keep in mind if you like hopping between multiple spots in a small lake. You'll need to plan your passes a little more deliberately instead of expecting nimble, rapid turns. One of the practical strengths that shows up in user conversations is the flush mount rod holder system. Unlike many kayaks that use brackets or clamped holders that can rattle, the Loon's integrated mounting points sit flush with the deck, reducing noise and giving a cleaner profile when you're trying to stay low in the water. The rod holders can be adjusted fore and aft, which allows you to balance the kayak depending on how much gear you have forward versus aft. In a scenario where you're trolling a line behind you, you can slide the holder back to keep the center of gravity near the midsection, preventing the bow from lifting too much. Storage-wise, the customizable work deck comes with a few built-in tie-down points and a couple of small compartments that lock with a cam lock. I've seen anglers use the tie-downs for securing a small chest freezer or a set of extra waders. The compartments are shallow, so they're best for items you want quick access to, like a phone, a small first aid kit, or a dry bag for snacks. If you're hoping for a full-size dry storage locker, you'll be disappointed. The Loon is more about flexible attachment than built-in volume. Now for the hidden trade-offs. The triple-layer polyester hull is advertised as a compromise between durability and weight. In practice, the kayak feels lighter than a comparable wooden or composite model, which is an advantage when you have to carry it.